But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Really quite proud of that intro. Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. Hello Adam and Rotten Mouse. Hello chat, how's everybody doing? I imagine everybody has heard the news from Britain about the election results. And I have to say, as much as I dread Keir Starmer's Labour Party, to be clear, for anyone who has not been following that, which is I would imagine most people, since there's basically only one person who's ever shown up in chat more than once who's in Britain. But Keir Starmer has basically said he's going to do everything the Tories are already doing. It's going to be all the worst shit the Tories have been doing, but they're going to be better at it. So, that's something to look forward to. But I was watching a little bit of his victory speech, which was about as inspiring as an unanesthetized colonoscopy, which is meant to be sort of psychological preparation for a minimum 5-year term under Keir Starmer, I suppose. But it was really interesting because it was complete bullshit. See, he kept on very self-consciously, I think, coming back to this point that supposedly this sort of victory was only possible with a changed Labour Party, by which he means, to be clear, this is referring to, compared to Labour under Jeremy Corbyn, a leader who actually was generated so much excitement in the population that Labour became the biggest political party in Europe for a time. But he's very self-consciously comparing himself to Corbyn because we're supposed to remember the ignominious defeat of 2019 and 2017 as well, and as opposed to this great victory which could only happen after Keir Starmer got in and with his charisma, which is the crowning achievement of generative AI, went in there and kicked out all kicked out all the Jews and people of color and decided to make it a safe place for white supremacists and transphobes and people who want to privatize the NHS and people who say that they'd like to be harder on poor people than the Tories, like Rachel Reeves. Actually, she's kind of all of those things I just listed. But here's the problem with that. There are a couple of problems. The main problem is it's a load of shite. Okay. Because this isn't a changed Labour Party, really. This is just a return to the Labour Party that existed in 2015, when the Daily Mash sort of summed up the public. That's sort of like a British Onion. It's one of two British Onions. They summed up the popular mood with a headline that said, "Labour to change their name to Labour, I suppose." because nobody gave a fuck about the Labour Party under Ed Miliband. And Ed Miliband also had Rachel Reeves in there saying she was going to be tougher on poor people than the Tories, and they're going to need to get on their bikes and work for nothing and all that stuff. You had this wonderful workfare guarantee where you were going to be forced to work for no pay and all that stuff. All the kind of stuff that Keir Starmer's, changed Labour Party represents, and they got their asses handed to them because abstention, mostly. They absolutely got wrecked in 2015. The whole reason that Corbyn even was given this chance to stand for the leadership was that there was an understanding amongst Labour MPs that there needed to be at least the appearance of a debate between approaches. Like, there needed to be some appearance that there's, some debate about, old sort of Labour social democratic values and stuff like that versus the neoliberal shite that they've been since, Blair and a little bit before. And they had absolutely they were so out of touch that they were absolutely shocked when Corbyn kicked everybody's asses. Like, the other candidates he stood against, some of them didn't even make 5% of the vote. Okay, so that's the first thing. But here's the other thing. Okay, Labour got fully 600,000 fewer votes than 2019. That's an interesting number because it closely tracks the number of new members who joined Labour when Corbyn got in. I just find that interesting. It could be a pure coincidence, but maybe not. But so, okay. Labour in 2019, we're not supposed to remember, was 2,000 votes short of being the government. The thing is, because Britain has this ridiculous first-past-the-post system, how those 22,000 votes would have to be distributed. Everything is so fucking random. This time out, Labour got 34% share of the vote. That's before we get into abstention, which was through the roof. I haven't seen national figures, but as the results were coming in, I was checking the turnout by constituencies. And specifically, in the constituencies where Labour won, and there were a lot of them, the turnout was unusually low. The constituencies where the Tories actually won had significantly higher turnout. So they got 34% of the vote, and that works out to 65% of the seats in Parliament. Make that fucking math for me. This is just, there was a journo from I think the Financial Times who said that this might be the biggest distortion of a result by the electoral system in British history, and that's saying something because their system is just a massive distortion. So, they actually got significantly fewer votes than the ignominious defeat of 2019, where they were 2,000 votes short of being in government. And that's supposed to be proof of just how people just are flocking to the inspiring leadership of Queer Harmer, the guy who doesn't like trans people and wants to hurt poor people, and who had a career as a human rights lawyer of sorts, a special kind of human rights lawyer. He would explain to the colonial police in the 6 counties of Ireland how they could get around human rights laws in order to do violence to people. A very special sort of human rights lawyer. He did do some, representing trade unionists and protesters for a while, but then he abandoned that pretty quickly and then he ended up as the chief prosecutor, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. Yeah, he's a shithead. But, this is just a wonderful example of why it is so ridiculous to treat election results as telling us really anything at all about public opinion. There are exceptions. There are times when when you've got a result that actually really does make a clear statement on public opinion. But here it's just ridiculous because it is so heavily mediated through an electoral system where if you voted for a candidate who didn't get in your constituency, then you might as well not have gone. You might as well not have bothered. Those votes are just considered to be nothing. So, the press will pretend that this is some sort of sea change. Everybody just wants a right-wing Labour Party that's going to do the exact same things as the people who lost 254 seats in this last election. And it's just wild. It's just complete nonsense. I mean, I'm going to have to look into this further when we actually... what's holding us up on national abstention figures is that there's one constituency in the 6 counties, East Derry, I think it is, where they had to do a full recount because somebody found a bundle of votes that nobody knew where it came from. So that one hasn't been called, and that leaves us with a gap in our information for the full national level turnout. Unless you want to just go constituency by constituency, all 600 of them, and add the shit up in an Excel table, and yeah, fuck that. I'd rather listen to Keir Starmer speak, actually. So, yeah. I mean, what you can tell about this really is that working class people really did not see any point in voting. Abstention is largely a working class affair. Likelihood to vote is very much proportional to income. And so, yeah. I mean, Keir Starmer's going to be, like, crowing about this bullshit. And, there were some nice results there. I mean, Joanna Cherry, Scottish TERF, lost her seat. Neo-Nazi TERF, Posey Parker, she lost her £500 deposit. She only got 150 votes. That's the silent majority. So that was neat. I mean, it was really nice seeing all these assholes lose their seats, but the trouble is you also get to see all these assholes holding their seats. Yes, Adam, you're quite right. That she did say that. It is very true, and it is awful. I mean, except that, like, Blair had some riz. It's easy to remember Blair now, who's just a fucking swamp monster. It's worth noting, you wanted just to hear, speaking of public opinion, you want to see something fun. Check out the approval ratings on Tony Blair. I saw the last time I saw actual polling on this was a couple of years ago. The man is truly universally hated. Everybody, across age groups, across party affiliation, across demographic regions, north, south, Scotland, Wales, 6 counties, Cornwall. The majority, we're talking like 80-90%, hate the man. So naturally, that's the guy that you want to emulate if you want to be electable. But the thing is that when Blair first got in there back in the 90s, he did actually have a certain charisma about him. He was just kind of that used car salesman and asshole charisma, but it was there. Keir Starmer doesn't have that. Keir Starmer is just the uncanny valley. He's the mayor of the uncanny valley. But I had promised, I'd seen this in my YouTube recommendations, and I said, we absolutely have to fucking see this. We absolutely have to see this. It will be too good. Carolyn Glick, the Texan Zionist over on JNS TV, she has an interesting hobby. She claims that Hamas did the Notre Dame fire. She also regularly has videos with such level-headed headlines as Biden declares war on Israel and stuff like that. Very special, very, very special commentator, very level-headed. But yeah. She's got Michael Crapaport on. Speaking of very special level-headed people. So, we're gonna look at that. Michael Crapaport is explaining why he's not voting for Biden. Which is, one of the weird premises for Carolyn Glick's world building is that supposedly Joe Biden is pro-Palestinian. That's how ghoulishly anti-Palestinian racist these motherfuckers are. that Joe Biden is supposedly pro-Palestinian. So they hate Biden, but it's like this made-up Biden in their head. So we're going to look at them hating on made-up Biden. I'm sure Michael Rappaport is going to give us all sorts of exciting insights. JNS, Jabronis need smacking. Okay, one of the weirdest things about Carolyn Glick is she doesn't look anything like this. Like, they must have airbrushed the shit out of these pictures. It is, or they're like 10 years old or something. Here we go.
October 7th was sort of an edifying moment for many, many people. We saw really what the true
I love she calls herself a journalist and author. She was also a military lawyer for the Israeli army.
character of people was after October 7th, how they related to it, if they celebrated it, if they were horrified by it, if they were terrified by it, if they were empowered by it.
If they talk really, really fast with no meaningful pauses and just keep on going on and on and on and on.
Saw a lot of basic truths come out about individuals and also about societies. And one of the individuals who really stepped up and has become a very, very prominent and important voice for Israel and for Jewish rights in general.
Jewish rights. Like, when has this motherfucker ever talked about Jewish rights?
And for the hostages and their speedy release and their suffering.
Really? He's talking about their speedy release, so he's been saying Israel should take the deal? I mean, there's been a deal to release them all for a very long time now, and Israel keeps saying, fuck that.
Is the actor, the comic.
Comic. He tried to be a comic for a while. It didn't go well.
Michael Rappaport. And I was really happy. Michael, I met him in one of his visits to Israel since October 7th in Tel Aviv with his wife, who's a beautiful woman, and had a fantastic time. And since then, we've been in touch and been trying to get him on the show. So he's back in Israel, and I'm so pleased to welcome the great.
I have to say, I do rather like the color of her jacket.
Michael Rappaport to the Carolyn Glick Show. Thanks so
Man, he looks like Big Boy who's been in a fight.
much.
I appreciate it, Carolyn.
I appreciate you.
It's fun
When was the last fucking movie this jabroni's been in?
to be here in the studio where all the magic happens, because I always watch the show.
Oh.
Wait, is he taking the piss out of this too? All the magic? All the exciting world building.
Well, there you go. And you see, it's not that great of a studio, but it's okay.
But you're great.
It's all about content.
And I want to acknowledge to the entire world that I know my shirt is wrinkled.
Okay.
I want to make sure that everyone knows
He looks like he's here to drop off a parcel.
that I know my shirt is wrinkled, so you don't have to go, your shirt is wrinkled, or you didn't have an iron. All of those things.
I'm sure, those are the criticisms we're going to come away with, Chad. I'm sure of it. The only thing that we're going to find to object to this is that, his shirt's a little bit wrinkled. It clearly has been recently ironed. Why am I talking about
So I just want to get that out of the way.
What's with that fucking
the top important things to
golf ball
discuss
pit?
during my trip to Israel is my wrinkled shirt. So to acknowledge that, because people on social media like, you had a wrinkled shirt. I know it's wrinkled. So anyway.
Okay, it's wrinkled, but as the person sitting across from you looking at the wrinkles one after the other, they look good. They're like a good wrinkle combo.
Wow, this is compelling viewing. I'm so glad that they're having this conversation. This is enriching the debate.
Thank you.
They're very nice.
Thank you.
All right, so now having gotten the important things out of the way, we can move to the inconsequential.
Yes.
All right, so October 6th. You're living in New York, you're an actor, you're a comic, you got everything going.
He did not have anything going. He literally, I mean, it would have been, I think, when was the, okay, I gotta IMDb him. I feel like it's been a long time since he was in a movie. Okay, movies. Known for Deep Blue Sea, 1999, Beautiful Girls, 1996, True Romance, Dick Ritchie, 1993, The Sixth Day, 2000. Okay, oh, he had one episode of Fallout. Yeah, okay. He hasn't done anything particularly big in a while, though.
Where were you on the whole Jewish stuff?
The Jewish stuff.
October 6th. I mean, traditionally, I would be referred to as a bagel and lox Jew. I don't think I was full bagel and lox at that point.
What? So bagel without lox? Lox without bagel? What the fuck does that mean?
Also, I get offended by the term bagel and lox Jew because I don't know anybody, let alone any Jews, who have just a bagel and lox. I like an everything bagel, toasted,
Right.
cream cheese, onions, tomato, and capers.
What about lettuce?
Well, I mean, freeing. This is Carolyn Glick, the Notre Dame truther. Freeing Palestinians is not going to be on the agenda. That's one thing I think we could be fairly certain about.
Not lettuce, but that's up for. I wouldn't argue with you if you had lettuce.
So I got all that plus lettuce.
Okay, the lettuce is fine. I mean, possibly, but
And also, what kind of cream cheese?
straight up.
Okay, this is making me long for the Trump-Biden debate.
Oh, okay.
And it's got to be a toasted everything bagel.
All right, because I like chive, but
I have no problem with. I wouldn't argue with that.
okay.
I like it. I like to mix the cream cheese also, but push comes to shove, I'll just say straight up cream cheese.
How are we going to be talking about this shit?
That's how I grew up for the most part. I have been speaking on things regarding anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism for the 5 or 6 years before that. Something that was very inciting for me was when the incident in Charlottesville happened.
The motherfuckers in Charlottesville were pro-Israel, though.
And they were saying Jews will not replace us. I had spoken up on that on social media.
Well, it's interesting that he brings this up because literally all the people he's allying himself with right now celebrated that. They were totally cool with that.
And then all the Kanye West things, I was speaking in the same sort of tone that people sort of hear me talking now. But as far as October 6th is concerned, I was by no means as informed. I was no means...
Well, he was even less informed than he is now.
As in touch and aware of the history, the detailed history of Israel and Gaza, Israel and Palestine, Israel with the world. And,
You just said Palestine. I wonder if she's going to object to that.
On October 7th, really October 8th, I'll be honest with you, because on October 7th, I had woken up late. I had performed the night before in Atlanta. I got
So there was Atlanta. He bombed in Atlanta at the
bunch
time.
of text messages from different people about what had happened. And like everybody, I was kind of piecing together what was going on. The videos were coming up. Videos were getting taken down. You're hearing, this, you're hearing that.
So how did you end up totally on the wrong side of this issue?
And then that same night, October 7th, in Atlanta, I was performing in Atlanta. I performed, went to sleep early, got up October 8th, Sunday, October 8th, and that's when everything sort of, I was like realizing the severity of the situation, the enormity of the situation. And then October 8th, when I landed from Atlanta to New York, there was a rally in Times Square, New York.
As opposed to Times Square, Decatur.
And it wasn't it was supposed to be a pro-Israel, pro-Jewish rally, and I saw the celebration from the pro-Palestinian people, and there was a girl that was going like this, like mocking the Israeli people, the Jewish people there, and
I see. It's cute how it's just assumed that people at a pro-Israel rally must be Jewish, even though overwhelmingly Zionists aren't.
all that, just like that 24 hours, 36 hours. Like,
I mean, what's interesting about this is he seems to be saying that he had no particular position on any of this until October 8th, and then he rapidly went over and became like this like genocidal reactionary Zionist asshole that we all know so well now. Immediately after. I mean, that's like, how did he avoid knowing anything about any of this until then, and then immediately end up on the wrong side of it?
it was like something I just was like, whoa. And then the next day I started speaking out on it.
Well, he was just like, whoa. He hasn't actually said why he was like, whoa. Other than there were people who perhaps were demonstrating against the genocide, which at that point had already been announced. I mean, Israel was already talking genocide. It was already very clear. They were going to murder a huge number of fucking people. They made absolutely no secret of it. And so, yeah, there would have been protesters out there, and maybe they probably, we're assuming that what he's saying is true, and which, I mean, maybe, but, yeah, I mean, there would be some objection to crocodile tears at that point, yeah.
And it's just really been a crazy time for me in terms of how I've been digesting everything.
That's such an interesting way to put it, considering his output. So what he's saying here, essentially, is that what we see of him on the internet these days, that is the excrement from the meal he had on October 8th.
Since then, and it's been a slow, but very, very, very informative. Very obviously, it's been a very sad, very frustrating, and truly enlightening time. Since now we're at 271 days, and I would have never imagined that we'd still be here 271 days later, fighting. That hostages are still in Gaza.
Well, a lot of them got released. The ones that got released were overwhelmingly released because a deal was made. They could all be released now. In fact, they could have all... I mean, he talks about October 8th. October 9th was when the first offer was made to release all the civilians with nothing else in return. Just don't do a ground invasion. That was like the only thing. Because the thing is, Hamas didn't want all these civilians in the first place. They ended up with them. People, random people brought them back. Hamas only just took charge of, took charge of their maintenance and trying to get arranged for their release, and Israel said no. If we're going to be talking about October, let's just keep our dates straight.
And the rapid change of anti-Jewishness specifically in my city. I'm born and raised in New York City. To see it,
anti-Jewishness, okay, this is just so ridiculous, because the idea here is he's actually using Jews as human shields when you get down to it, because he's actually equating all of us to what Israel is doing and the US is doing right now. I mean, that's not something you do if you actually care about the welfare of Jews.
And to see it grow and to see it every single day, there's an incident every single day in New York. It really hurts my heart. And it's confusing and it's frustrating.
Well, I mean, so he's saying, I think by incident he means like a protest. That hurts his heart. See, some of us look at the shit that is going down in Gaza, which we can watch more or less in real time. and that's not exactly easy to sleep on. But I guess he's a delicate genius. He's a sensitive artist type, Michael Rappaport, and so he can't even deal with that. A protest already hurts his heart.
And it's embarrassing because I love New York and I'm a prideful, braggadocious New Yorker. And, you know, I've always felt that
New York is embarrassing him. That's how he thinks this is going down. He thinks New York is embarrassing him.
New York is the greatest city on earth. And in the last few weeks, you know, I've really had to come to terms that right now...
Wait, last few weeks? When was this? 2 days ago. What does he mean the last 2 weeks? Or was this filmed a long time ago? No, he said 271 days.
Can I say that New York is the greatest city on earth with the open anti-Jewishness and the open anti-Semitism?
Wait. This is the second time he has said anti-Jewishness and anti-Semitism as if he's using them to mean different things.
And the open anti-Zionism.
Fuck Zionism.
And I like to just call it anti-Jewishness because this word Zionism, as you know, is taken on this term, and I think that people...
Well, yeah, he's really breaking it down for us. Zionism has taken on this, term.
Use it as a veil against anti-Jewishness, and, they try to separate us and confuse us.
Well, no, nobody's trying to... I mean, admittedly, it's not hard to confuse Michael Rappaport. He looks pretty easy to confuse. But, no, the point is that Zionism is a very specific ideology and movement, and most of its adherents aren't Jewish. And a lot of Jews, actually, more and more, aren't fans of it.
And all this stuff. So...
I want to get to that in a second.
Yeah. So just trying to give you, like an opening sort of thing.
He's so eloquent. It's so great. Israel has such well-spoken spokesmodels.
All that, has been very, very enlightening. Enlightening is usually a positive thing. And then, of course, everything that's going on here, and the war, the hostages,
it's hard to if you didn't know who this was, you would not get the impression listening to him talk that he has been talking, screaming about Israel for months and months and months. It's basically all he's been doing, as far as I can tell. But here, he's been given a forum in which to actually just expound on his thoughts, and it turns out he hasn't actually got any.
Seeing it, when I came to Israel, I'd never been to Israel before. Never. And
you got here in November?
Got here in November, and seeing what I saw and what, everybody's seeing, and go...
What did you see?
Going to Kibbutz Be'eri.
It's worth noting... The only way to go to the Gaza envelope, in which Kibbutz Be'eri is if you have the explicit authorization of the government. It is a closed military zone. Like, you can't just, rock up there, drive down and check it out. You have to talk to the local military authorities to get special permission, and it is only done for, special propaganda tours. And, what he would be seeing at this point, who knows what he would have seen by the time he got there. But Kibbutz Be'eri was wrecked by fucking tank fire. And in fact, we have survivors, like Yasmin Porat, who have spoken at length about how that destruction happened.
The first day I got here and seeing that, and smelling it.
So it was a propaganda junket that they took him on.
Because you could smell the fire still. You could smell the smoke. You could smell...
The fire, again, that is from tank shells.
The blood. And you could smell the death, and you could hear the rockets and the missiles very, very... Not faintly. They're jolting. And they tell you, when you You know,
Yeah, I mean, this is actually true. Like, some of the bombs that Israel has been dropping on Gaza are so powerful, so destructive, that they're feeling shockwaves 60 miles outside of Gaza, in, like, settlements way outside of the envelope that was, like, shaking walls and shit. That is, I mean, that is real. That's what people in Gaza are dealing with, is shit that is so powerful, so explosive, that 60 miles off, it will, like, shake pictures off your wall.
be aware.
And they're right under it.
When you get there, like, what you're going to sort of, don't be scared of the missiles. And if this happens, we'll do this. And it knocked me on my socks. It knocked me.
It knocked him on his socks.
It rocked me. And then everything else after that first trip rocked me. And
so he went on a propaganda junket where the military will have escorted him around and given them their version, which we know, because of the Israeli press, is a lie. Like, I mean, the Israeli media have played a major role in exposing a lot of just outright lies that were told about what went down in Be'eri and other places on the 7th of October. But that's not, you don't hear about that if you go on one of these propaganda junkets, and that's the only way you can actually see the things he's talking about seeing.
And I've been rocked ever since. And the...
I mean, this is the equivalent, really, of somebody going on a guided tour of Pyongyang and coming back and saying, yeah, and it knocked my socks off, and now I'm totally, like, converted to Juche, and the dear General Secretary Grand Marshal Kim Jong-un and everything. I mean, all he's done, he had a guided propaganda tour and zero critical thought. I mean, I can imagine the impact of that will have been massive. I mean, there's a reason that they're allowing people into this closed military zone to go on these tours. I mean, between, the wreckage and the fact that you can actually hear the explosions nearby, I can imagine that would have a serious emotional impact on somebody, and somebody who was inclined to buy into the bullshit from Israel would probably have it pretty strongly impressed on him.
All of it has been a very, very changing time for me.
There are a lot of ways that Jews have responded in the United States and really around the world, not so much in Israel, but around the world outside of Israel, for Jews that, we've seen this just volcanic eruption of anti-Semitism, of anti-Jewishness, of anti-Zionism, hatred towards Jewish people as Jewish people.
But now, I wonder, okay, this is interesting. She's just said these four things, and it's not clear if she's synonymizing them, maybe she is, or if she's saying them as separate things. But of course, hatred towards Jewish people as Jewish people is precisely the definition Zionists like to avoid when it comes to anti-Semitism. Because the thing is, that's the exact kind of anti-Semitism a lot of their closest allies engage in. And in fact, when Israel does all this horrible shit and says they're doing it in the name of all Jews everywhere, well, I mean, obviously that is encouraged by that sort of thing. Israel very deliberately encourages anti-Semitism in that sense.
And violence, and social acceptability of this. And it's like the norm now in a lot of circles, including in entertainment circles. I mean, I saw, what's her name? Jennifer Gardner, drumming for Palestine. Like, what is that?
That's called human decency.
You're like an LA party girl. You're a pretty good actress. I like a lot of your movies, but what is that?
Well, you gotta have principles. Why you gotta be decent? Why actors have morals?
And that's just like, it's just the popular thing to do now. So
It's interesting that they've sort of just shifted over there like that. I mean, like, keep in mind, let's just remember, that it's a great way to lose your job. People have lost, they've been fired by, in the entertainment, people have been fired by their agents for taking a stand on this. People have been blacklisted. People have lost their jobs. People in all sorts of fields. People have ended up getting a knock on the door from the feds and shit over this. I mean, she's like, oh, it's just a popular thing now. I wonder why it is. I wonder why it's just a popular thing now. Could it be something to do with what Israel is doing that has made it popular to support Palestinians?
There are Jews who look at that and just say, all right, it's too dangerous to be Jewish. I'm just I'm just not going to talk about it anymore. And there are Jews who say, well, if that's where the popular girls are going, then that's where I'm going, because I want to be a popular girl, and they're Jews for Palestine.
Yeah, that's why Jews decide to go into pro-Palestine activism, to be popular. Because if there's one thing that really ensures that you have a full dance card and you get invited to all the right parties and your career just takes off, it's being a prominent vocal pro-Palestine activist. That's right.
And they've also, they believe it. They've been indoctrinated. And then there are Jews who...
They've been indoctrinated. I mean, it's like, wait a second. We get indoctrinated with Zionist ideology on Palestine in this country pervasively. What does it say that wears off so quickly then?
Are scared and not sure quite what to do. And then there are Jews like you who say, F this, all right? Let me just... So why do you think... I mean, is it a spiritual... Like, for you, when you're looking at this situation, what is the motivator that is making you stand up
Well, it's certainly a good career move.
And shout about it?
As I mentioned,
Yeah, well, he hasn't got much else going on.
like as far as my Jewish identity as a kid.
It wasn't just bagels and lox.
It wasn't just bagels and lox, but my parents, both Ashkenazi Jews, New York Jews. My father's 91. He's in New York. He was obviously bar mitzvahed, and my mother's from the 5 towns of Long Island, which, for those of you, doesn't get any more Jewish. And they create and breed a certain kind of Jewish woman, very, very tough, Jewish woman. But the one thing that my father did talk to me about, and it was by proxy. It was almost like in regards to himself, but he always talked about this one story where he stood up to these bullies in his neighborhood on the west side of Manhattan that were bullying all the Jewish kids. And
on the Upper West Side?
On the Upper West Side, west. This is, he was 10. Kids, they're kids, but there was kids from another neighborhood. They were a lot of Irish kids, and came down, and they would always bully these kids, and they would always run away. And then one day, my father was with his stickball gang, his stickball team, and these kids said to my father, "You killed Christ, you killed Christ." My father's 10. I said, "You don't even know what they're talking about."
Well, I mean, the only answer to that is, yes, he deserved to die, and I hope he burned in hell.
All right.
Like, literally, but you killed Christ. And my father's like, "I didn't kill Christ." And, he turned around, and the rest of his friends had, sort of ran away, and my father fought the leader of their gang to a draw. And he always talked about this, and and when I started becoming an actor, my father never loved the stereotype of Woody Allen. He didn't like that. He liked Woody Allen movies, he just didn't like that stereotype. My father's, sort of obviously he's 91, but he's a bigger guy. He's not a tough guy. My father's an intellectual, but he just didn't like that stereotype. So that moment when he stood up to those bullies, and when I started acting, he was like, don't just be that stereotype. But he didn't pound it in my head. He said it a couple of, it resonated with me for some reason. I didn't listen to a lot of things my father said. I didn't listen to a lot of things my mother said. A lot of things, but those things resonated.
Okay, so that is interesting, because one of the things that Zionism does, one of the various, fucked up things that Zionism does to Jewish culture, is that it sells this idea that non-Israeli Jews are, weak and degenerate and all this stuff, and the real tough Jews, the real redeemed new Jews are the ones in Palestine because they can, steal land and, kill Palestinians. and shit like that. I mean, if you look up the new Jew, the propaganda posters from like the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Yeah, I mean, it's just straight up fast shit.
And, you know,
I mean, Zionism very directly connects to exactly this insecurity.
Always identified clearly, proudly, and loudly as a Jew, as a Jewish person. You know, I have, you know, light hair, so a lot of times people told me I was Irish. You know, in New York, people like always assume, you know, that there's no Jews with, you know, strawberry blonde hairs. I'm like, yo, I'm Jewish. I'm okay, you know, but I didn't have any anti-Semitism. I really didn't.
Right.
None. You know, there'd be some ball breaking, but it wasn't. It's amongst friends. You know, I grew up. You know, you're playing ball. You're this. Your mom's this. Oh, you're, you know. But it's not. I didn't have any confrontation. I didn't have anything that was like jeopardizing.
Like, okay.
And you know, I was very clear. Like, you know, I'm not going to subject myself to any anti-Semitism if it comes my way. You know, and the celebration of October 7th, the elation of October 7th, the euphoria of October 7th.
I wonder why it might be that people might celebrate breaking out of a walled ghetto and shutting down, actually militarily defeating the division of the army that was responsible for ensuring that no people got out, and like hardly any food got in. Like, I have a feeling that maybe the army did not tell him about the humiliating defeat of the Gaza division during his little propaganda tour.
The bloodlust. And
then after, like, it's like, you know, F the Jews, you deserve it. Like, that's like, no.
Who the fuck said that?
And I've spoken out about a lot of things. I've spoken out about tons of stuff. Politically,
yeah, we know.
Socially, and I've spoken on behalf of Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, everything. You know, this rights, that's rights. You know, I have a mouth.
We know.
You know, so of course, like when it comes to myself and the threat of, you know, my people and me being Jewish, just like really like me, it wasn't like I was like, I'm speaking on behalf of her. I'm just like, you know, this is not acceptable.
Right.
And just sort of when the dust was sort of settling, if the dust is even settled, I don't think we even say the dust hasn't settled. But, you know, when you were sort of being able to make a clearer view of things, like it was just kind of like, what is happening here? And I'm like, and then to see people, and I don't think it was, I think I first saw it in Boston or in Massachusetts outside of what school? I don't think it was Harvard. I can't remember what school it was. Maybe it was Pennsylvania. Seeing posters ripped down immediately of hostages.
Yeah, because it's fucking propaganda to justify the genocide. That's why the way you can tell that is that, okay, within Israel there is actually a movement to demanding the release of the hostages. That demand is directed at the government, because everybody knows that the sticking point is that the government does not want to make a deal to release them. But these posters were specifically meant as a way of attacking Palestinians and people who are in solidarity with them. It had nothing to do with getting the hostages back, because if you wanted to get the hostages back, what you'd want to do is have a protest outside of the Israeli embassy. Tell them to accept the deal. But they don't do that.
Well, that was going on at NYU Law School pretty fast.
I can't remember. I feel like the first time I saw it, maybe it was outside of MIT. Maybe it was outside the campus area in Massachusetts. But I was like, what? Ripping out. These people are kidnapped. You know, and then I'm seeing it in New York. I'm like, what are you... Like, you know, like on 9/11, there was...
Well, maybe rather than just asking rhetorical questions, maybe you should listen to the fucking answer. Because I get a feeling, the more I'm listening to this guy, that he did not actually have particularly strong feelings on this before this. And then it was just basically, he got bombarded with propaganda, including this propaganda tour of the Gaza envelope, chaperoned by the Israeli military, who gave them their bullshit version, which has been completely debunked at this point. And, like, that's... because he does not sound like somebody who has given this a hell of a lot of thought. He does not sound like somebody who's even read a single book about this. Any book. he just sounds like somebody who heard some stuff and he was like emotionally overcome by it, and like I can imagine. I mean, as I said, it's completely. Of course, that would be an emotionally overwhelming experience to be walked through there, to be walked through the Gaza envelope, the wreckage of like Kibbutz Be'eri or whatever. While while you can hear the bombs and stuff going off, and while the smell hasn't even cleared, and it's like maybe it's literally just a matter of he's only heard this, and it was just so overwhelming that he just immediately went to it. It's like he does not seem to have very deep thoughts on any of this. Like, you listen to the way he talks about, like, his childhood, his upbringing, his parents and stuff like that, versus the way he talks about anything to do with Palestine, with Israel and stuff. He is way more coherent talking about his family, and it's all, like, very disjointed and jerky, and then I was like, whoa, and I was like, oh, and everything. Just incoherent and very non-specific, very vague when he's talking about anything to do with Israel. It's like, very clearly, he can speak better than he does, but not on this subject. He clearly just doesn't know shit about it.
When people still thought that people were missing,
Right, I remember.
you would never think to rip down posters. And
But that was a completely different situation.
ever. And
Yeah, and especially missing is not the same thing.
ever, I don't care what race, denomination, you would never think that. And you would never see a sign saying, yay, celebrate the martyrs, honor the martyrs, because that's when...
Yeah, I mean, let's just remember the term martyr, shaheed, means anyone who has died in an unjust way. In fact, women who die in childbirth are called shahida, which is the feminine of it. Like, yeah, martyr does not necessarily mean somebody who actually died with a weapon in their hand. That means, like, literally everybody who is being killed in Gaza counts as a martyr. And one thing, I did not know this. I had somehow missed this. I only know about it because I saw an announcement that they had provisionally lifted this policy. Facebook had, on all their platforms, banned the word martyr. Which is literally, I mean, I'm guessing they mean they banned the Arabic word, shaheed, or shahida, which is literally the word that people use to describe their murdered dead. So literally, I mean, that would have censored just practically the entire Palestinian, pretty much every Palestinian on Facebook as a result of that, because everybody's got fucking murdered dead after all this.
When it became mainstream, this term martyrs became mainstream for me.
Became mainstream. He'd never heard of martyrs before this.
And I think for a lot of people, it was after 9/11, as being, these people think they're martyrs.
Yeah, I mean, notice, it's like, he clearly has not actually engaged with what the people who say that mean by it.
Ran this plane in the air, and they're more, you would never see any celebration. I think there was one video of some celebration in New Jersey, and apparently, as legends have it, people went out there and kicked ass. But you would never see this elation in New York City. These people were bad. These are victims.
Yeah, what you're noticing is that you're talking about very different kinds of situations here.
And it made total sense.
Right.
But, like, this is not the same thing as flying fucking planes into the fucking World Trade Center. This would be more like if a resistance force from the Middle East kicked the asses of the Navy SEALs or something like that. Because this was, above all, a military operation against military targets. We're supposed to forget that. I bet he's never even heard that. Judging from, like, how little he seems to know about it, but not the same fucking thing.
But to see all these things happen and the celebration, the bloodlust and the euphoria, and it was like Super Bowl Sunday. It was like people were like jumping for joy, and this woman.
Well, it's not that it's telling that this is his point of reference. The idea that you realize the reason people were jumping for joy was because Palestinians in Gaza were kicked out of the area that is now the Gaza envelope back between 48 and 52. This was the first time in generations that they got to set foot on that land. That's why people were fucking overjoyed.
It's like mocking, oh, you're crying about you're sad about these people. Yeah, like the next day. So all these sort of things, and me speaking out and then kind of seeing that other people aren't speaking out, it's just...
Yeah, if there's one thing that you really did not hear any of, you still don't, is pro-Israel propaganda in the U.S.
And then
will nobody speak on behalf of Israel? You never get to hear what Israel's point of view is.
Coming to Israel, which was a real an eye-opener after the 7th, and seeing what I saw and talking to the people that I've talked to, and really...
What people has he talked to?
It's been we're heading to 9 months, a 9-month, watching you, listening to you, honest. That's how I reached out to you, is because I started, and amongst other...
Jesus. Okay, I mean, and she's sitting here talking about indoctrination. This guy clearly has had very few thoughts in his head about this. Just look at how incoherent he is when he talks about it. There's very little behind what he's saying. And so he's just got plugged into a bunch of... because this is hardline right-wing Zionism.
Others, it's been a real, like an eye-opening thing in a lot of ways.
What I find really amazing about the way that you've been doing your work
The complete lack of self-awareness about just how absolutely cringe it is.
It's like you not only did you decide that you have to stand up to bullies, which is admirable and important.
You decided to stand up for bullies.
Also, that you said, what is this Judaism thing? So what is it to be a Jew? You take your pictures with your arm out with your tefillin on in the morning. Like that's going a couple steps further. That's saying, okay, I'm not a bagel and lox Jew anymore.
This is even more fucked up. So, this is even more fucked up that this is like, his fucking Jewish awakening comes with a side of just fascism.
With cream cheese and all capers and all. I'm not just that. All right, we're being attacked. What are we? Let's look into this. What's that about?
Yeah, maybe look into it a little bit more though, Mike. Just maybe a little bit more, because it could be that there's a reason that people in Palestine are kind of pissed off about Israel.
I'm figuring out what it's about, Carolyn. To be totally honest, I don't have a total answer. I know that
that's for sure.
As you get older, as I've gotten older,
I think we're the same old.
Das Problem, GGM, ist eigentlich, dass viele jüdischen Israelis diesen Schaden tatsächlich anerkennen. Den Umfragen zufolge ist es so, dass die allermeisten jüdischen Israelis, so 80%, der Meinung sind, dass nicht genug Schaden zugefügt werde. Dass nicht genug getötet, nicht genug gemetzelt werde. Also das ist eine Gesellschaft, die ja völlig von genozidalem Rassismus nur so durchschissen ist.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as it's like, as you get older, you just it's just specifically the tefillin. When I started doing it, I've done it in New York. I would probably say I've done it in New York reluctantly, on the streets, because there's always,
With the Chabad guys?
all the time. And they're very persuasive, and a lot of times I remember
and I mean, kind of vile. Chabad opened up a Chabad house in Gaza in some building that had been partially destroyed and whose inhabitants had been kicked out and were probably either dead or in tents someplace. Yeah, honestly, fuck Chabad.
Last time I did it with a Chabad guy, it was probably
I mean, here in the Cincinnati area, we had this thing for a while. It seems to have finally ended some years ago. But it used to be that for Christmas in Cincinnati, the KKK would set up a cross on Fountain Square, which is the big major square in downtown Cincinnati. And Chabad would set up a menorah, and people didn't like the cross, didn't like the KKK having this fucking, installation on Fountain Square for weeks around Christmas. And Chabad defended it. Chabad said, you should just think of it as a religious symbol. And it's like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah, no, it's not a religious symbol. I mean, yes, it is, but it's a little bit more than that, wouldn't you say?
2016.
All right.
17 maybe 2000. I don't know. Time is all screwed up. But they were so young.
Not the only thing.
They were like kids, and they were like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm like, all right, like what are you guys doing? And I'm talking to them, and they just want to get their raps in, and my wife, we have a picture of because they were so young, or they look so young, but there was like one of them's 18, and then they got the little, and it's such a New York thing, and I wasn't bar mitzvah. My brother was bar mitzvah. I went to Hebrew school for one day. They asked me never to come back. I was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I can understand that. I would too.
Ask Carolyn.
You still are.
And but where my Judaism is going and what it is, I don't have an answer. I know that I love rapping tefillin because to me it's it's a prayer, but it's also a meditation. It's a time to think only about everybody else besides myself.
See, I mean, the more I listen to this, actually, this is interesting. Because the more I listen to this, the more I see just how little is actually behind all the shit he talks about Palestinians and stuff. And it kind of makes me wonder. I mean, it's like, if somebody else had reached him first, he might have actually taken an entirely different view on this. It seems like he came to this as something of a blank slate, and it's just Israel's fucking propaganda tour of the Gaza envelope came first. I mean, the more I see this, the more I think, maybe somebody should send him some literature, give him something else. Maybe the fact that he doesn't... Because the thing is, when somebody is this completely lacking in knowledge on the subject, he's clearly not actually beyond some, pat talking points, he's uncomfortable talking about it. That, to me, for somebody who has chosen to speak so much about it, that suggests to me he really is just... I mean, it's not just that he's uninformed. He clearly is. What he says is bullshit. Anytime he actually talks about Israel. But it's also that he is only superficially versed in the propaganda that he is spewing. And it's like, I mean, that sounds like somebody who maybe there's some room for him to reconsider if he actually, sees some other shit. Who knows? I mean, maybe not, but it's just very clear. Everything that he says is superficial. He clearly does not know a whole lot about what he's talking about.
And it's also a thing.
He's also an asshole. There is
I take my time with it, so it's like a 5-minute way to just. It's like slows everything down for me, and especially since October 7th. I'm a phone person. As people probably guess, I'm on my phone. It's
yes, and you record the cringiest videos. It's like, yeah, they make Darman look less cringe.
Just a time to start my day in a very peaceful, calm. Just thinking about everybody but myself. and it's an important time to think about everybody but myself, and especially in regard to my Jewish people, and especially in regard to, you know, and then when I say Jewish and Israeli people.
This is broken down into chapters, and this is facing threats and cancellations, the impact of political correctness. How is that not just one chapter? I mean, political correctness is just the term that right-wingers in the 1990s used to describe what they now call cancel culture. Why not just call it that? Presidential politics and voting. I think we're going to jump ahead to this. Hey, Riveroon, how you doing? Actually, let's go here. Support for Israel and Jewish identity.
And I want the President of the United States to feel comfortable and confident enough to say the names. If you're not going to say the names of all 120 hostages, that's a long time. To drill the 8 American hostages.
I mean, this guy. I think that's actually a pretty tall order for him to remember the names of them.
There's 8 American hostages. 8, you know, and I'm like, you know.
Yeah, and there's a deal on the table, has been for months, to release them. He has very specifically declined that deal. They could all have been back on October 9th.
You know, and you know, there's one family that's from Chicago. There's, you know, the Paul and Goldberg. Right. You know, Omer's family, Nutra's family. They're from Long Island.
The Tenafly.
The Edan, Alexander from Tenafly. You know, like, these are New York, like, that's tri-state area people. Like, you know, like, I want the president to see, I want you to, like, we're coming to get you now.
There's an offer to release them, has been since October. Why not? I mean...
Not 9 months later, like, we are coming in there to get you. We shouldn't have gone this far.
Yeah, and it didn't have to. And the thing is, what we've already established is that people coming to get them just gets them killed. Like, every time Israel has gone in there and supposedly done a rescue mission, my own interpretation is that they just randomly happened across. They decided they did an attack, and then it turned out, oh shit, there's some captives here, and we killed them. Because they kill roughly the same number of captives that they actually managed to rescue.
They shouldn't have gone this far, and you know, there should be no shame or hesitancy in that. You know, and I've said, you know, so what I want is I want some, you know, some bulls, and I want some, like, it's okay to, like, you know, to stand for what's right and what's wrong, you know. And I got blowback. But I was like, let's say, God forbid, you know, on October 7th, there was an all-girls basketball team from an HBCU.
Well, this is a really random fucking hypothetical.
A historically black college that was at the Nova Festival. And 10 American black girls had gotten kidnapped.
And well, you think Joe Biden would? You think them being black would increase their value to Joe Biden? Really? I mean, I just can't help thinking of a bit that David Chappelle did back when he was still funny and not just like an absolute cringe lord, like 20 years ago, about how taking black people don't get taken hostage is the bit, because hostage takers know that nobody's going, you know, the cops aren't going to give a shit. You know, the government is not going to give a shit. They'll just hang up. Like, why the hell does he think that having, like, girls, you know, women's basketball side from a black college would somehow make the U.S. more likely to give a shit?
They were part of the 200 plus that got kidnapped from begin with. What would the reaction from America be then? You think that 10 black girls from an historically black college would still be in?
Well, like, why does it have to be from an historically black college, though?
As of now, no effing way. No way. One way or another, they would have gotten out.
Really? Really?
They would have been released, and it would have been all over every sports every ESPN, every WESPN, every Emmys, Grammys. You think that they
There were Emmys and Grammys?
would have talked about that at the Oscars?
You think they would have? Because I
Hell yeah! No, 500%.
Wow, he's even getting pushed back.
They would have.
because you see that
Michelle Obama bring our girls back with the. You think that if there had been 2 kidnapped black girls?
Oh, well, he's just being okay. He's just doing even more racism now. Like, really?
I don't know. So
1 kidnapped black girl from America.
One half of a kidnapped black girl, but like, is he just gonna? Is he doing a
Who's
negotiation?
like a girl from
the Bronx,
from New York? I don't know, Iowa, the American girl. He was here. It was non-Jewish, not an Israel American citizen, an American citizen who was at the Nova Festival.
Like, I mean, Palestinians with U.S. citizenship get murdered by Israel all the time. In fact, a number of U.S. citizens are in Gaza right now, not as captives, but just because they were visiting family when this all kicked off. And they've been getting killed too. Why the fuck does he think that this would be any different?
Well, you bet your ass you'd have been
yeah,
already.
I disagree with you. You know why?
Look what we did for Brittany.
Oh, I'm actually curious. Shut the fuck up, Michael. I want to know why she disagrees. Is she going to point out how obviously ridiculous it is to suggest that the U.S., and specifically Joe Biden, would suddenly give more of a fuck if the hostages were black?
Griner.
There were 3 American servicemen, all African American, in Jordan, who were shot by Iraqi militia. I think that they were killed when Iranian militia,
What were the U.S. military doing in Jordan, by the way?
Iranian-controlled Iraqi militia shot missiles at their base in Jordan, right along.
There's dispute about whether this was in Jordan. There is some reason to believe it may, in fact, have been in Syria. It's the part of Jordan that the U.S. claims it is not far from Syria.
Along sort of the tri-border area of Jordan, Iraq, and Syria.
It ain't Israel, though.
No, but they were all.
Yeah, but who gives a fuck? I mean, your whole point was that if they were black, suddenly the U.S. would care. Because if there's one thing that truly matters to the United States government, it's black lives.
Killed, and there was no American response. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to cut a deal with the Iranians, and then they're going to have their proxies stop attacking American military assist. So, I mean, they
We're
didn't
talking
do
about
anything.
civilians.
Yeah, but we're talking about civilians. But then you see that
But we're talking about civilians anyway, and I mean, the U.S. doesn't give a shit about them either, and Israel doesn't either.
do have a lot of African American artists and stuff who are coming over, and everybody ignores them. The ones who get all of the support and the public sympathy are the ones who are anti-American, like that Brittany Griner or Kanye West. Who attack Jewish people, who attack the United States, who won't stand for the Star-Spangled Banner. They're the.
Also der Biden, der muss Spagat machen. Das ist eben das Problem. I mean, here the thing. I'm gonna switch to English because it's a broader point. It's like Biden is doing a thing Democrats he's faced with sort of a dilemma. The Democrats have always got to deal with this dilemma of either looking evil or looking ineffectual. If they do the things that they're actually there to do, the things their donors want them to do, the stuff that they're actually like ideologically committed to doing, they look evil. If they do the things that their voters want them to do, then their donors will be pissed off, so that's not going to happen. So they have to look like they're going, so they end up looking ineffectual. They have to pretend like they'd like to do, codify Roe v. Wade or something like that, but we just can't figure out how to do it. It just doesn't work. We've only got all the votes we need, but somehow we can't put any pressure on anyone and stuff, and maybe the Republicans can, wake up Trent Lott's ghost or something. It's the same thing that Biden is doing with the genocide in Gaza. Because the thing is, he is very clearly cool with what's going on there. He has been expediting weapons. Israel would collapse if there weren't these just-in-time shipments of weapons being sent, because they're blowing them up as quickly as they can be delivered, practically. But the thing is, people back home don't want to see him enthusiastically supporting this mass slaughter, because enough people are utterly appalled by it, especially his indispensable voters, 80% of whom wanted to see this thing over a very long time ago. So, I mean, not really a very long time ago, it just all feels eternal at the moment. It's hard to believe it's 9 months, it feels like years. But, so what he does is allows himself to, just look completely ineffectual. And, so he will say stuff to the media. It'll be like, oh, Israel needs to not do this or something like that. Israel, of course, through the, Israel doesn't get their instructions from from Biden via the U.S. media. They have a phone for that. So they know that that they can take no notice of it. And they take no notice of it. But Biden has to say it so that he looks like an actual human being who breathes air and drinks water. But of course, Israel's not going to pay him any mind because they know they don't have to. Because they're still getting the weapons, and as long as they're getting the weapons, clearly the US is cool with what's going on. And so the result is that Biden looks like he's being utterly humiliated, when in fact, what he's doing is he's in an actual, he's trying to do two irreconcilable things. Look like he is at least somewhat uncomfortable with the amount of slaughter that's going on in Gaza, while at the same time making sure that slaughter can continue.
The ones who get the symptoms. So look at Clarence Thomas, right? If his kid had been kidnapped from the Nova Festival, you think that anybody would have cared? No, because he's a conservative.
Right. Yeah, if there's one thing that you could be fairly certain about, it's that a Supreme Court justice's kid, nobody's going to give a shit about that. Nobody gives a fuck about a Supreme Court justice's kid.
So I think that it's got
I would imagine he's probably 50 by now.
More to do with the political identity and with their support for Israel. I think that political support for Israel has become toxic for progressives, and
that is music to my ears. And this is why liberal Zionism is dying such a slow death, and why so much of Israel's propaganda efforts are directed at the combination of people who don't know shit. Like Michael Rappaport, he doesn't know shit. He came into this not knowing anything. He got whisked off to this fucking tour. Had his fucking, Zionist awakening and stuff like that, but not so much so that he wants to learn anything, because clearly he is not comfortable talking extemporaneously about any of it. It's just straight up reactionaries are the people that they're banking on, because reactionaries are the only people who are not going to be fundamentally uncomfortable with what they're doing. It's like the same thing with TERFs. I got a lot of shit from British Trotskyists in 2014, 2015, because I was saying that it was very clear that TERFs, regardless of what formations they were in at a given time, were eventually, they are fundamentally allied with FASH. FASH are their forever home. But the reason is obvious. No matter what group they're in, if they're in leftist groups or feminist groups or something like that, either their transphobia or how obsessive they are about their transphobia will make people uncomfortable. The one place where those things are not something, it will not only not make people uncomfortable, but will actually be welcomed, is amongst FASH, amongst the far right. And it's the same thing with Zionism. Zionism requires you, if you mask off Zionism, which is the only kind that there really is anymore. This is not, 1980, 1990, when there was a lot of control over information, and it was possible not to really know exactly what was going on in Palestine unless you knew where to seek out accurate information, and could do that without an internet. Different universe. Hard to even imagine at this point, even for those of us who have lived through it. But the thing is, now Zionism's totally mask off, and so a lot of like liberals and sort of leftish leaning progressives will look at this and be appalled, because these are not the things that they want to think of themselves as standing for. Well, who is not going to be uncomfortable with mass slaughter, with just open racism, and all the rest of it? Well, I mean, you're going to go with Nazis, and that's what Israel has done. Israel has maintained very cordial relations with all the top neo-Nazis in Europe and the U.S.
They'll prefer the Palestinians.
In fact, Carolyn Glick here has a video. Sorry, hiccups. I haven't watched the video, but the title of it is something about how Hungary is the safest, the last safe place for Jews in Europe. Hungary is run by a neo-Nazi. It's run by a guy who celebrates Admiral Horthy, the motherfucker who murdered 400,000 Jews. He wanted to murder all 1 million, but pressure from the Vatican actually ended up stopping, because he was a good Catholic. He didn't want to kill Jews unless the Vatican was okay with it, and the Vatican had decided they were a little bit fed up.
To women from a historically black college. I'm thinking, what's the name of it? Stolman. Or
Yes.
You're gonna.
Spellman.
They're not gonna care because they're pro-Israel. They've got the wrong politics. I've gotten to the point where I'm thinking that this Palestinian thing, it's become the Vietnam War of the 2020s.
Oh, I mean, okay. This is your wholesome moment. Just watch her fret over the fact that she knows how completely on the wrong side of history she and her emotional support ethno-state are.
And, if you're not pro-Palestinian and want to annihilate the Jewish state, then you don't deserve the protection.
Fuck off with this Jewish state bullshit. It is a Zionist state. Most Jews don't live there. Most of us don't want to. And in fact, since the 7th of October, lots of Jews have been leaving.
The PC police.
I hope that's not true, but I understand. I hope that's not true. I hope these dummies.
I would imagine you hope that's not true, because you only just hitched your wagon to this fucking star. And hearing somebody who has been at it for much longer than you have telling you that actually what you're doing here is probably going to make your name toxic waste, that's gotta be a bit of an uncomfortable moment. She's just giving him a lot to think about.
I think that there's still a minority, these people, the pro-Palestinian people. I think that they're, the pro-Hamas people, pro-terrorist people.
I don't know that there's any Palestinian group, and certainly not here. The Palestinian Authority never condemned October 7. Nobody.
Well, the Palestinian Authority is just Israel.
Nobody ever condemned. No organized Palestinian group that I can think of.
They were happy. It's the greatest state.
Also in America, none of them really condemned at all October 7th. So, you're saying it's as much only Hamas as it was only Hamas people in Gaza who came in and murdered and raped and
oh, wait, that is a thing that didn't happen.
And burned and...
That did not happen either. There's no evidence. I mean, we have all sorts of video from the 7th of October, and none of the Palestinians who went out there armed had any equipment that would allow them to burn anybody. They were just walking around with AKs. There were a couple RPGs. That was it. The only way, the burning clearly happened from above. You can look at the photo of the cars, and we know, because it's been admitted and, survivors have talked about it, that Israel was firing wildly at these cars from Apache helicopters. The burning is between tank shells and helicopter fire. That was not Palestinians.
stole and kidnapped. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like making generalizations, but happen.
Oh, well, wow. I mean, God forbid that Carol and Glick would make generalizations.
I know. I agree. It's concerning, you know, with the whole thing is.
All right, last question, presidential politics.
What do you want to know?
Well, aside from wanting to, you know, like,
I'm not voting for Biden. I don't know if...
Why not? I mean, this is just so wild. Biden has given them everything they want, and it's not enough. Because he has to because he has to at least occasionally acknowledge the humanity of Palestinians.
If people watching know how hard I was on Trump when he was a candidate, I'm not voting for Biden. I'm not voting for Biden. I'm not voting for Kamala. I'm not voting for anybody that isn't. I'm not voting for any meandering, double talking out of the side of your mouth, sideways talking, upside down talking.
What the fuck is diagonal talking, parallelopipe talking, tetradecahedron talking?
My people, Jewish people, Israel, and my money. And I might.
Well, wow. Wait, what did it?
My people, Jewish people, Israel, and my money. And I might have said in the past, my money in Israel. Now my Israel and my money.
What the fuck is he saying?
Knock on wood. Fortunately, I could say that.
What the fuck does that mean?
Israel and my money.
Is there a verb?
Period. This holding up weapons and building rafts. What the hell did he build it for?
Yeah. I mean, you should be happy about that. It was used to massacre Palestinians, and supposedly you're cool with that.
A raft's float. It was sinking pipelines. The port,
the pier, and it's worth noting that the construction of that supposed humanitarian pier, which has never been used to deliver aid to Palestinians, marked a massive decrease in humanitarian aid being allowed into Palestinians. It went down, I think it might have been like 60% or something like that, and it has not recovered since.
Temporary pier.
The port, like a port that should have been in a lake. You can't even park a motorboat in a lake, you know. And this is
it's so fucking funny for you two. Like, I mean, you don't get to fucking joke about this because he did that so that the U.S. could pretend to be doing something about the starving population of Gaza while not doing anything.
To go, well, I did
$320 million of taxpayer money.
And he thought that was going to be like...
And that's nothing compared to the amount that he's spent on fucking bombs.
I built this $320 million to get the... Yeah, you built you can't even go water skiing off that piece of shit.
Fuck you, man. Water skiing. Palestinians can't even go fishing without getting shot at. And that's not since October 7th. That's since, like, ever. That's decades that's been going on in Gaza. But I'm noticing the time, and it is time to wrap up for tonight. Thank you for everyone who has joined in. It's always good to see you. Giga M, Riveroon, Adam, Rotten Mouse, and anyone else who I've missed. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was interesting. And I will be back tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Hyperpolyglotting on Twitch to look at the best and worst of language YouTube and play some games, possibly GeoGuessr, possibly some of the new stuff that I've picked up during the Cly sale. And then tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time to resume the Last JabroniCon. See you later. Good night. Good luck. And fuck Michael Rappaport, actually. Go with that.